There's nothing more satisfying than layering up a print and taking it in one pull. I just want to show up and do a little bit more of this because I'm starting to get the feeling that I want to be more involved with you guys, a little bit more in your process, and I want to show you a little bit more of mine. And so I was wondering if anybody would even be interested in a free hang or Zoom session where we just really kind of get in there and make some cool stuff together. Let me know in the comments below. I think it would really be a lot of fun. It's probably one of the most satisfying pieces of artwork that I actually make. And I've been sitting down, just working 20 minutes a day, just having fun, letting go, really shutting the mind off, just spreading the paint out, allowing them to overlap, not thinking too much beyond just basic color theory, you know, just making sure that I'm not combining colors that are going to turn to mud, because nobody really wants that. Not really. I love using colors, creating a couple of, you know, simple base prints like you see here. You know, these are not meant to be layered. This is just braying out some color and taking some quick pulls because I needed a few sheets, as you always do when you first start, just to have something to pull some positive prints, you know, when you start to layer stencils and other patterns. So, you know, I love that grunge that, you know, that paint scab left behind. And here you can see paint had dried on the plate, and this is what's to come. So much goodness. But layering up, you know, when you want to do a one pull, you got to kind of think of it in reverse, you know, reverse engineer it. When you want contrast and you want grunge, like I'm always striving to get in my pulls, the key that I've learned over the years, you know, just like in life, is really not to overthink it, not to overdo it, but you got to have contrast. You got to have something that's gonna, you know, push the envelope a little bit. Black, dark gray, dark brown, those are great. And you always want to kind of lay those down in the forefront. They're not really meant to come from behind because you can't really lighten it. You know, when you're adding dark to it, add it in little bits and pieces in the beginning. You know, those little quiet moments. I'm using drywall tape here, as you can see, just to really get that, that texture just pressed into there. I love taking textures from things that are around the house. You know, you don't always need to buy all your texture making materials, and then just, you know, use other prints that are on deli paper and other things to just kind of pull up some of those little bits and pieces as those dry, because you want to kind of, you know, add a little character, a little interest. Prints, you know, they're like life. You're putting down your emotions and your feelings, whatever you're going through that day. You're telling a story in this piece. So as you see here, just kind of pulling up. I'm always looking to pull up little bits and pieces like that, making things feel very organic. And when using like things like script stencils or any sort of wording, you always want to remember that when you're pulling it up, you need to lay those down backwards. One of the most common mistakes that I see students make is to just have that brayer keep in contact with the surface. Lifting it, as you see here, just lifting it helps that paint to disperse around the roller. And that's how you don't get those little moons. You want to just kind of push things through. It's, you know, adding these things, you don't want to always have it be the full image. I think there's a lot of beauty in small moments, and that's, I think, why I love partial images so much. A little bit more of an organic feel. You know, this print is going to tell a story, and I'm using those base prints to just kind of see if that's dry, because you got to have those layers dry in between. And if something pulls up, that's awesome. We're going to layer onto that print. But you're going to tell a story. So, you know, it's not as interesting at least not to me, if it's full, complete images. Sometimes having some grunge or having some things that are imperfect, that's really kind of where that magic lies, you know, because life is not perfect. We are not perfect. I love using colors that are unexpected, you know, maybe lifting a little bit. The more you brayer down, when you continue to roll that roller over it, especially after you deposit that excess paint somewhere else and come back, you'll lift up some of the color, and that's really magical. This is the kind of stuff I hope we can talk about in some of these upcoming live hangouts together. I think it would be so fun to hear in person what you guys are working on. Let me know if you'd be interested in the comments, so that way I know we should make this happen. Sometimes when you have all this great color, it seems wasteful to just put it onto a scrap piece of paper. Why not move it onto another print? And then just when you least expect it, throw a stencil down. I love this stencil. This is a new stencil to me, and I'm addicted to it. I can't stop using it. I've been sitting down for 20 minutes every day, just printing or creating. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. I love layering that. And that was using that base print and then coming back in with some deli paper to really pull it up, because what you're doing now is you're removing that color. And by removing the color, you're really going to allow something from behind the next layer to shine. And that can be very cool. And I don't ever worry about, you know, stuff not working out. Because if you get just a little bit on one big giant piece of paper and you get just a little tiny bit pulled up, that's okay. Because that's just something that you're going to keep building on in the future. Printing is a process, just very much so like life. You know, not everything gets done perfectly in one day. A lot of prints I use over and over. I love using colors that blend well together, because when you kind of get them to overlap like that and to create these new shades and then come in and lift a little tiny bit out, oh, it's just so cool. Another new stencil for me, kind of some Van Gogh spirals, and this one is gorgeous. Watch this. This print had just a little tiny bit on it, but what you can pull up from here on this deli paper, and you can now use that in an art journal. You can use it in so many different interesting ways. That print, love that. And it leaves that magical pattern behind, allowing light and another color to come in from behind. Now, we're not going to continue to layer these. We're going to add white now, which is going to be the final layer. All those layers underneath have been dried. So we need to come back in with something that is wet, because how else are you going to be able to pull that up? So once you brayer out a nice coverage of white going completely end to end, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want it to be too thick because it'll take longer for your print to dry. But now you have to actually let it sit and wait. And one of the things that I've noticed over time is as you lay your hand down behind the print, once you have that bond with the paper, it's a little cool. And when it's cool, it needs to sit. It needs to be quiet and just allow the dry layer, the wet layer, and the paper to come together. And then once it does, then you're ready to take that pull. Layering out some white onto this other piece, I didn't want it to be too thick because I was going to choose something special to put it down. I took this piece from my mom's papers. It's from 1956, and it's just some random, thing that she saved over the years, but it's the first piece of hers that I'm using for a print. And just really getting that bond. And it's thin because it's old. It's got history. It has a story on its own. Just really honoring the past for what's about to be the art. Adding a stencil to this little tiny plate where we've, created some grunge and it was used as a tool. Adding a layer and pulling. Ugh, And look at this. Once it sat for about 5 minutes, look at this pull. Those colors, how they're really just kind of singing, you know, blending together with this grunginess, and it's just cool. And it cleaned the plate. That paint scab came up as well, adding even more interest to a really cool print that we can now turn into other cool projects. And I've got 2 very cool projects planned for this print. This print is gorgeous. I love the light that the trees left behind. I love all the colors, how they came together. They were unexpected. And now this one. And this piece of paper is fragile, so I recognize that I needed to go a little slowly, go with care with 2 hands, and just pull it back and look at those Van Gogh spirals. My mom, she loved art. She would think it's so cool to have a Van Gogh pattern on a piece of her, you know, and that makes this print even more special. And look at that. The paper kind of didn't tear, but the paint was left behind. And what was really magical about that, as it's coming up, leaving these lines, is it exposed the writing underneath. And so you can kind of see a little bit of the history in there. And again, I'm going to make something really special with these as well. You know, this is not just any piece of art. It's not any print. They tell a story. They tell my story, what I'm feeling that day. And here's just a cast-off plate. This was not meant to be anything. And now it's this cute little piece that I can use, you know, as an embellishment on a card, on a tag, in an art journal. So much goodness. You can really make some amazing things with these leftover prints, but I have 2 particular projects that I have in mind. I want to make some coasters and I want to make some cards. So meet me right here in this video for the first step.